Welcome back, focused learners. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for another deep dive on the explainer. Okay, so did you know the world produces over 500 billion plastic bottles literally every single year? It's it's just a massive global challenge. Today, we're setting the stage to explore exactly how the non-alcoholic beverage industry actually tracks and manages that enormous packaging footprint. So if you love understanding how things work behind the scenes, how complex corporate data translates into real-world impact, well, you're in the exact right place.
All right, I want you to picture something for a second. Think about the last time you bought, say, a bottled water, a soda, maybe an iced tea. You drank it, you enjoyed it, and then you tossed the bottle into a bin, right? But what actually happens to the environmental cost of your drink after that container leaves your hand? Because, it doesn't just disappear into thin air. The materials, the physical weight, the whole end-of-life process, they all create massive environmental externalities. And today, we're going to look at exactly how beverage giants are actually being held accountable for every single bottle.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The beverage packaging problem. 2. Weighing the packaging impact. 3. Reducing virgin material use. 4. Recycling, reusing, and composting. And finally, 5. Strategies for a greener future. Let's get right into it.
So, starting off with Section 1, the beverage packaging problem and decoding the SASB standards. Now, what's really interesting here is that the non-alcoholic beverage industry is dominated by these massive international entities. And here's the kicker. While many of them don't actually manufacture their own bottles, they still face huge reputational and regulatory risks based on the waste their products leave behind. So to manage this, they use the incredibly strict SASB framework, specifically metrics FBNB 410A.1 and point .2. And guys, these aren't just polite suggestions. These are rigorous accounting metrics that companies use to report the total weight of their packaging, exactly what it's made of, and whether it's actually recyclable. It's basically the ultimate corporate report card for packaging. To truly grasp these metrics, we kind of have to look at the physical journey of a beverage package. And it happens in 3 critical stages. Step 1 is extraction and creation, literally pulling materials out of the earth to make the container. Step 2 is consumer use. That's when you actually buy it and drink it. And step 3 is the end-of-life phase, which includes things like take-back programs, recycling, or composting. Ultimately, the whole goal of lifecycle management is to make this journey as efficient and as harmless as humanly possible. Moving on to Section 2, weighing the packaging impact, tracking every gram. Okay, so before a company can even think about improving its packaging, it has to know exactly how much material is putting out into the world, right? And the SASB standards require companies to be super specific about what they're actually measuring. Primary packaging is the material that physically touches the drink. So picture the plastic or glass bottle itself. Secondary packaging is what holds those primary packages together. Think of the cardboard case around a 12-pack of soda. And then tertiary packaging is the bulk transport material, like, the shrink wrap on a giant shipping pallet. Now, for these core sustainability metrics, companies focus really heavily on the primary and secondary packaging, the stuff that actually ends up in your hands as the consumer. And right here is the metric that basically acts as a company's ultimate environmental budget, the total weight of their packaging measured in metric tons. Now, the connection here is absolutely vital. By minimizing this weight, companies don't just use less plastic. They massively drop the fossil fuels required to physically transport millions of bottles across the globe. It's pretty straightforward. Less weight instantly equals fewer carbon emissions, and of course, much lower costs. All right, Section 3, reducing virgin material use and shifting the supply chain. If we really want to mitigate the negative environmental impacts of packaging, we've got to stop pulling new raw materials out of the earth in the first place. And this brilliantly illustrates how companies categorize their recycled replacements. They do it in 2 distinct ways. We have pre-consumer material versus post-consumer material. Pre-consumer material is waste that's diverted during the manufacturing process itself, like, say, scrap material from a factory floor that gets scooped up and immediately reused. But post-consumer material, that is the absolute holy grail of recycling. This is the material generated by households or commercial facilities. It's that empty bottle you toss into the recycling bin, successfully reclaimed and turned into a brand new product. But, recycling isn't the only way to avoid using virgin fossil fuels. The standards also push really hard for renewable materials. Now, this is defined as packaging composed of biomass from a living source that is replenished at a rate equal to or even faster than it's depleted. I mean, just think about it for a second. It is wildly futuristic to imagine that tomorrow's soda bottle might be made entirely out of agricultural grasses, crops, or, I don't know, even algae, instead of petroleum-based plastics. It's just a totally fascinating shift in how we conceive of a simple container.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, recycling, reusing, and composting, the end-of-life phase.
So this is where the container's journey concludes. And honestly, it's arguably the most critical phase for preventing environmental damage. Under SASB, a beverage company must break down their end-of-life packaging into these three very specific, quantifiable slices: the percentage of their packaging by weight that is recyclable, the percentage that is reusable, and the percentage that is compostable. They can't just guess here, guys. They have to provide the hard, verifiable data. And the rules around what actually qualifies for these categories are incredibly strict. Take reusable, for example. A package is only defined as reusable if it is specifically designed to accomplish a set number of trips for its original purpose. And, crucially, this is a really big deal, a company absolutely cannot claim a bottle is reusable just because you happen to refill it at home with tap water. No way. They can only claim it if they actually have a formal take-back program in place to collect it, wash it, and reuse it systematically. Now, the definition for compostable is equally rigorous. A material is only truly compostable if it undergoes degradation by biological processes to yield CO2, water, inorganic compounds, and biomass. And listen to this key phrase: leaving no visible, distinguishable, or toxic residue. Basically, it has to safely and completely return to the earth. This matters so deeply because it's what guarantees that microplastics and nasty toxins don't just sneak their way into our soil and, eventually right back into our food chain.
Okay, bringing us home to Section 5, strategies for a greener future. The corporate report card.
Look, it's one thing for a massive beverage giant to just claim they're environmentally friendly, right? But it's another thing entirely to prove they're actively executing a real life cycle management strategy. These standards basically act as an impenetrable shield against corporate greenwashing. So rather than looking at this as just some random list of boring acronyms, think of these as specific actions. When a brand claims they've achieved weight minimization, they have to mathematically prove it with ISO 18602. If they claim they're recycling materials, they're legally bound by ISO 18604. Any boast they make about compostable plastics, that has to pass the super rigid ASTM D6400 test. And renewable claims, those rely on ISO 14021. The point is, every single claim has to be scientifically sound and internationally recognized.
So the crucial point is that all of these individual metrics, the precise weight tracking, the big shift to recycle materials, those incredibly strict end-of-life programs, they all culminate into one single powerful tool. And that is the Lifecycle Assessment, or LCA. An LCA is basically this comprehensive analysis that allows companies to finally zoom out and see the big picture. It is the absolute ultimate tool they use to design packaging that's lighter, vastly more efficient, and way easier to transport. And by doing that, they're fundamentally driving down both their massive environmental footprint and, frankly, their operating costs.
Well, we've seen how the beverage industry uses incredibly precise data to track the entire life cycle of their packaging, literally from the extraction of raw materials right down to the moment a bottle is composted or recycled. They're measuring every single gram to reduce their environmental externalities. But it does leave us with a final provocative thought to ponder. If these giant corporations are strictly accounting for the life cycle of their packaging, are you considering the life cycle impact of your next drink purchase? Just something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, Focus Learners. Keep asking those great questions, and I'll see you next time.